Hello. Just want to introduce this bell. This bell belonged to my grandfather, John O'Hara, who used to teach in this schoolhouse for many years. We are lucky to have a rocking chair that was presented to him when he retired from here. And we'll show you a photo of that rocking chair. I have it at home in my care right now. We're here to talk about the school, the one-room schoolhouse. We have a total of 9 brick ones documented. We'll talk a little bit about the interior of the school and the things that were around it. As you see here, we have school desks. In the earlier schools that were frame or log, they did not have this type desk. They had benches. And as you see, we have a potbelly stove. You always had windows because that was your source of light. The first school in Jackson Township was really Dixon Township because Jackson had not been formed yet. The first schoolhouse was built in 1814. Jackson Township became a township in 1816. Every school district designed in the state of Ohio, section number 16 was designated as the school area. Now, with Jackson, the school areas are in 4 square miles. In other words, every 2 miles is a school in either direction, north, south, east, or west. This was so no child had to walk more than 2 miles to school. School was 3 months long. You think, why so short? Well, the kids were needed to do the work in the farm. And so the school year for them was 3 months. Usually the attendance was 20 to 25 kids. Then from 1869, we have the one-room schools that are brick being built. And that's where we get the 9 schools that we documented. McQuinney's, when they were redoing this place, found an attendance book. And it lists all of the kids and their daily attendance. Teachers' pay was about $1 a day. That was paid out of public funds. Now, a lot of times this was called the McQuinney School because it is on McQuinney land, and it was originally on McQuinney land. Edwin McQuinney owned this property before Lambert's had it. It is really schoolhouse number 3. The grades were 1 through 8. If you wanted to go to high school, depending on where you lived, that was possible. There was a high school in Campbellstown. So those kids that wanted to go to high school went to this brick structure that no longer exists, that was beautiful, and it sat where the present township house sits. But if you lived in Gasper Township, they had no high school. So those kids had to pay tuition to go to an area that had a high school. Louise Keller, who used to live in Campbellstown, told me that she lived in Gasper, moved to town to live with an aunt and go to school. Then she'd go home on the weekends. We think it's so easy today to go to school, but it was not then. If we look outside of many of our schools, there's evidence of an outhouse. There's evidence of pumps, because they all had to get water to drink. And they all drank from the same cup. And we wonder why they got sick. They did not know about science. One of the last schools, one-room schools to close was the one in Monroe Township. And we have with us Jane Summers, who attended that school as a young child. And so we're going to find out about what it was like for her. We have with us today Jane Summers. I used to teach with Jane. She has an interesting story about the one-room schoolhouse because she attended one. Now, she's not that old, but it was one of the last schoolhouses in existence in Preble County, and she was fortunate enough to attend it. So I'm going to let her tell her story.
Thank you, Barb. Yes, I did attend the El Dorado one-room schoolhouse. There was still a one-room schoolhouse at West Manchester. El Dorado and West Manchester went together to become part of Monroe Township School. I attended Monroe Township School for 11 years after attending my first year at El Dorado. In El Dorado, there were 4 grades: first, second, third, fourth. 1 row of students of each grade. I happened to be moved to the second row every time they finished the first row. And I found out why years later. Then my father came home from World War II, and he was very nervous, so we bought some land out in the country, and I attended Monroe from 2nd grade on. We had not moved when school started for my 2nd grade, and I was permitted to ride the big school bus with the big kids until we moved out in the country. I thought I was very, very special because they treated me like a child, I guess like big
you
kids
really
treat little kids. And so I was that. My 1st grade teacher in the one-room schoolhouse was Mrs. Short. She was, her maiden name had been Staten. And when I moved to Monroe, my 2nd grade teacher was Virginia Royer. She had been Virginia Staten. So I had sisters for the 1st grade and the 2nd grade. In the 3rd grade, I had Miss Gauck. Anyone that has ever attended Monroe knew Miss Gauck. She taught school there for over 50 years.
Yes, she did.
My 4th grade teacher was Miss Kern. And Miss Kern could not understand how I could get such good grades in math and reading, science, social studies, but did not do well in spelling. She just would talk to me about that quite often. I have learned later, spelling is not intelligence, it is a skill. So you have a musical skill or an art skill. I did not have the spelling skill. Then in the 5th grade, we had Mrs. Buzzard. Mrs. Buzzard's husband was the undertaker in El Dorado.
That's right.
So most people knew Miss Buzzard. Mrs. Buzzard's daughter was also Jill White Vanneman. She was also a teacher, and then her granddaughter, Tiana, was a teacher.
And we all taught with her.
We all taught with with all three of them. A sixth grade teacher was Mrs. Engel, and Mrs. Engel was extremely strict teacher, and in today's world would not have been allowed to put students down like she often did. I, as you can probably tell, always had trouble with being quiet, and always had something to say on every subject. Mrs. Engel particularly did not like that. Then when we ended the sixth grade, we moved to the next floor. We went upstairs to junior high and high school. Seventh grade teacher was Miss Ferguson. Miss Ferguson had been a victim of polio, and one arm did not work very well, but she was also our gym teacher and demanded a lot because of what she could not do, I think. You know, she really liked seeing us perform. Eighth grade teacher was Mr. Holsinger. Mr. Holsinger was also a teacher for over 50 years. He had math skills that were unbelievable. Then we get to move into the big study hall. The big study hall was freshmen at one end and sophomores at the other end. And of course, as you can tell, when I'm going through all this, there was only one class of every grade.
Right.
They ranged probably from around the 30s up till when we got to the end, they were getting up into the 40s and 50s. Then junior high, well, then we went into the junior high, we had a classroom again, and then senior class, we had a room all of our own.
Tell me about the one-room school.
The one-room school was on the back street of El Dorado. We had outhouse. There were no inside plumbing. And it was all one building, but one end was the girls, one end was the boys. The teacher would instruct the first grade. Then we would have work to do, and she would instruct the second grade, and then to the third, and then to the fourth. Second, third, and fourth would have board work to do while she's working on the first grade. And believe it or not, there was never any problems. She instructed, everyone was busy. We went home at lunchtime. We walked home. We walked to school. We walked home at lunch. My mother was working in the creamery. So I went to the creamery, and we went across the street to what was called the ice cream plant. It was a restaurant and an ice cream place. And we would eat lunch there, and then I'd walk back to school. Then at the end of school, I would walk to my aunt's because my mother was working, and I wouldn't have anybody at home. So we did a lot of walking back and it didn't matter. I do not remember ever having a day off of school in the one-room schoolhouse. So
no holidays.
No holidays, no snow days. I started to say, also I ended up teaching. I went to Ohio State for a while, and when I moved back home, I had 2 little children. I was married when I went to school, and they knocked on the door one August, middle of August, and said, "Did you go to college?" And I said, "Yes, but I don't have a cadet degree." That was very popular at that time.
2 years.
2 years, and you could teach.
Yeah.
I did not go that program because I didn't know how long I was going to be able to go to school. I said I did not do that. He said, "That's okay, we can get you certified." We have 35 students, 6th grade students over here that need a teacher. I said, "I can't get certified." He said, "Oh yes, we can take care of that." I went down to the county superintendent. I got a temporary certificate.
Was that C.R. Koblenz?
Yes.
I thought so.
And Mr. Black was preparing to come into that office. So I talked to both of them. And I had to take 2 college classes that year, teach 35 6th graders, and I had 2 little babies at home.
And you did it.
And I did it because I was blessed with more energy than what most people had. While I was teaching that 6th grade, the 4th grade teacher it was Mrs. Short, that 1st grade teacher. She was teaching 4th grade, and we had recess duty together. And so we're talking, and she said, "Janie, did I ever tell you why I moved you over to the 2nd grade when you were in the 1st grade?" I said, "No, but I assume because I can do it." "Well," she said, "yes, you did, but that's not the reason." And I said, "Well, what was the reason?" "It was the only way to keep your mouth shut." So there went my bubble as far. Now, when I went to Monroe, and I already had 2nd grade, and we did cursive in 2nd grade. So I took it upon myself to teach students how to do cursive. My 2nd grade teacher, the sister to my 1st, was not very happy with that. So she stopped by my house one day and talked to my mother. My mother gave me a lecture, and I stopped teaching cursive. So I guess I was teaching when I was in the 2nd grade.
You were born a teacher.
Yes. When I was in high school, they didn't call in substitute teachers. They would take some of the high school girls that usually did their homework and so forth, and I often was in the grade school
For
substituting. Yes. So I had teaching experience even when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Then I got married right out of high school to help put my husband through college. I ended up taking a few classes myself and got in about a year and a half before he finished school, and we moved back to Preble County. Finished up my education at Miami, night school, summer school, so forth.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes. It is very sad to go by and see Monroe School now. It's in very bad disrepair.
Yes, it is.
And I was in a class of 33, 17 boys, 16 girls.
Now, see, my graduating class was 22, and I often laugh because 2 of those were left over from the year before.
Okay. My husband, 2 years ahead of me, was 23. Mm-hmm. Yes. We always had all boy officers. Back then.
Oh, well, that was a man's world.
Boys voted for boys, girls voted for girls. So,
Yeah.
yes. It was a wonderful experience. Did not get a lot of classes that I should have had to go to college. We did not have a single foreign language. No teacher.
We had Latin, and I took a year of Latin.
My sister, 8 years ahead of me, got Latin,
But that Latin saved me.
Yes.
With my English course at Miami.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Trying to think of some others. We were very close-knit classes.
Do you still get together?
Cliques. Monroe still has their alumni.
We do too.
We just finished our 100th alumni in this last June, and we had over 200 attendance.
We had 125 for Jackson this year.
That was good. That was good.
I mean, 125 years
Oh, I'm sorry.
of
I thought you were-
existence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you were in existence, or you had alumni at least before we did.
Yeah. We were one of the first school systems.
Yeah.
And we were the first to consolidate
Oh,
into a high
what
school.
year did you consolidate?
I think, I can't recall.
I can recall because that 6th grade that I taught, they are the last graduating class.
Okay.
So 1968 was the last graduating class of Monroe.
Okay.
But of course, they attended Jackson when the
Yes,
consolidation.
because they merged to become National Trail.
Yes, Monroe, Jackson, and Jefferson consolidated. And the last was mine. I think we have just over 400 alumni still living.
Good.
And but like I said, to have
And it
over
gets smaller
200.
every year.
Yes, yes, a lot smaller.
Yep.
Yes.
Jane, we thank you so much for being with us today. We've
was a
learned a lot. And we thank Ellen for being with us today. It's been a fun adventure.
I've
Thank you.
enjoyed every minute of it.
Thank you. I have with me today Ellen McQuinney Hall, a teacher, a retired teacher. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her parents and all that they went through to prepare this building as it is today.
My parents, Norlin and Carolyn McQuinney, acquired this property where my brother lives now in the early 70s, 1970s. And they really didn't do too much with it. My brother moved here on the property with his wife. And then they were restoring another house. They restored 2 country farm homes, and they also did a lot of refinishing of woodwork, of furniture, of old furniture. So antiques and things of the past were really what they enjoyed doing together. And then in the 1980s, my dad was working on barns, some of the barns on this property, and he was starting to find desks and different items that would have been here in this schoolhouse, of course. So somebody just took it and put it into a barn and left it there for years, and then he was able to find those articles. And he didn't really know what was going to transpire from this, but he just kept going and going, and the more he found, I think the more excited he got. And then once he started restoring, the first thing he had to do was put a new roof on the schoolhouse. And he didn't do that himself, but just about everything else he did. He put a new ceiling in here, and he did that by himself. And I don't know how, but he did, with a lot of scaffolding. And then he started on the windows, working on the windows. And then the floor, when he first came into the schoolhouse, this was used almost like a barn. And it had equipment in it, and it had feed sacks, probably some feed, and it probably had many, many raccoons and animals of the time, you know. So they did a lot of damage. In other words, probably 3/4 of the floor was damaged. And so he started checking around, and he found a grocery store up in Middleborough, just north of here, that they were going to tear down, and it was just about the same time frame as this schoolhouse. And so he and my brothers went up and tore that out of the grocery before they demolished the grocery. And so most of the floor in here came from an old grocery store.
Neat.
Yeah. And so then it just went on, and as people began to see what Dad was doing, they'd stop and ask, well, what do you need? And they would bring desks, and they would bring parts of desks in boxes, and then Dad had to be like a jigsaw puzzle and put it back together, and then Mom restored it by sanding and staining the desks. So it was just a wonderful match with both of them, how they worked together. And they put the sidewalls in. Oh, and then one other important point was the school boards, chalkboards behind us came from Jackson School before they tore that down. So that was fun. I kept thinking.
I have one of those slates at home in my barn.
Oh. I love them, and I kept thinking, now I wonder which classroom. Was that Mrs. Sanders' classroom, you know? Because she was the wonderful teacher, one of the wonderful teachers at Jackson. But the desk came from the barn, the school desk. This recitation bench is just a perfect example of of how a teacher would call one grade level up and they would sit here and she would,
One-on-one.
yes, one-on-one with them while the others had their assignments. So it was just fun. The stove, of course, came from back in the barn. There is a wood box back there that's original. The shelves on the back wall are original. Let's see, what else do we have? Well, the school bell, there's a school bell on the back there. Well, and then your bell, your grandpa's bell.
Yep.
Yes. So,
I might interject. When I was
Yes.
going to school at Jackson, we had desks like this. First grade was a table about maybe that long and about that wide, and there's 2 drawers, which I have one of those upstairs. And I don't remember about second grade, but I do remember third grade on up, we had school desks like this, even in the Jackson building.
they were really modeled
Yeah.
after this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, my parents started having groups come in about 1980, in the 1980s. They started having people come in. There would be church groups that would have their meeting, or there would be sororities that had luncheons here. It was really fun. And then when I taught at National Trail, we had our 5th graders come, and we would have classes in here. And then we had the Historical Society bring, they were called traveling trunks. And someone would teach out in the yard, and then a class they'd have a classroom in here set up just like it was then. So it's come a long way. It's come a long way, and we just want to keep it going.
Good education story. One of my favorite stories with my family is not only was my grandfather a teacher, but my father, Clayton O'Hara, was a teacher. I taught for 30 years, and my son is now teaching.
Oh, well, how wonderful. Oh, that is.
So there's 4 generations
4
of us.
generations. Whew, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Now, I want to ask you a question. What do you foresee in the future for this place? Do you have any idea?
It's hard to know. I would like to continue, along with my brother, a consultation with him to see what we can do. I would like classrooms to come. We would like visitors and more open houses. And I think my issue is getting the word out,
Yeah.
really, for me.
Your advertising.
Advertising.
Marketing.
Marketing, yes. I didn't take that in college. I didn't foresee this.
I notice you have a plaque out on the
Yes.
front door here. Tell me about it.
How wonderful. I just happened to see advertisement about the Historical Society presenting a plaque to a business or old business or whatever, and I thought, oh gosh, I've got to do that for Mom and Dad. I just have to do that. So for me, it was a wonderful saying thank you to Mom and Dad for all your work.
Perfect.
And I was just so pleased to get it because it meant a lot.
I'm sure.
And then Mom was 92 at the time. This was 3 years ago. And she was still alive, and she got to be here for that wonderful celebration.
Wonderful.
And so, teary moments, yes, but it was wonderful.
Yes.
For her to...
So that was good closure for her.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was just like a big thank you and a big hug.
Yeah.
For all the work, because I don't know at the time, they were doing this because they enjoyed the process.
Right.
And I don't think they...
Thought about the future of it.
No. Not too far, no. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. This has been great.
We thank you for watching our story. I would like to leave with you another thought. All of our stories of the one-room schools are documented in this book. It is available at the Preble County Historic Society. We had many authors on this. I happened to write the one on Jackson Township. It was a venture of love, and we had editors that were involved, we had writers that were involved, we had folks that put it in alphabetical order, indexing it in the end, and there was a lot of work that went into this. So if you get a chance and you want to know more about one-room schools, this is an excellent resource. I am winding things up here. I am Barb Cox. I used to teach in Eaton for 30 years, subbed throughout the county for 16 years after that, was on the National Trails School Board. Education is in my heart. My son, who has just retired from the Park Service, is now doing his student teaching in Richmond. So it's a part of our lives. Thank you.